This is Bob Pigue of Gemini Systems. Gemini Systems is a 5-star IBM Premier Business Partner based in New York City, and I'm head of Gemini's Business Process Design and Automation Practice. This presentation is based on one that I gave at IBM's Impact Comes to You conference held in New York City in September 2010, and in it I discussed two related ideas which we've broken up into two videos. In part one, I discuss a unique structured methodology to design and redesign business processes using something called the Commitment Management Protocol. And in part two, we demonstrate business process automation software from IBM known as WebSphere Lombardi Edition. The combination of these two ideas can help organizations achieve business transformation through dramatically improved and managed business processes. Part one of our video series begins with an introduction to the Commitment Management Protocol. The agenda for the presentation starts with why an emphasis on business process is important to today's organizations. I'll follow that with an introduction to the Commitment Management Protocol itself, which is a design approach and methodology for looking at business processes with an eye towards optimization. And then we'll demonstrate a sample business process using WebSphere Lombardi Edition. I'll also show what it looks like from a process management standpoint using that same tool. So, why all of this attention on business processes? Well, we hear a lot in the business press these days about how process is king, how excellence is a moving target, how we have to continuously improve just to stay relevant to our customers. And there have been a number of studies, including those that you see quoting McKinsey and PeopleSoft, that have shown that this emphasis on process is essential, and that those organizations that can continue to improve and that can adapt quickly to constantly changing business conditions are the ones that are going to succeed. So if you agree with me that this emphasis on process is appropriate and well placed, how do we go about looking at our processes with an eye towards making them better, towards making them more efficient, less costly, with an emphasis on faster turnaround time, targeted to achieve the positive outcomes that they're theoretically designed to produce? Well, maybe you wouldn't be surprised, but perhaps 80% of the companies that I speak with on this topic to design and document business processes use flowcharts. The problem with flowcharts is that there's no intelligence in a flowchart. You can create a flowchart to depict a process that doesn't make any sense, or one that drives your customers crazy, or your business into the ground. If you're using a flowchart, it implies that all the intelligence has to come from the designer of the process or the subject matter expert himself, in that there's no guidance provided by the methodology or the approach that you're using to help ensure that process is sound. With a flowchart, there's no structure, there's no rigor, there's no emphasis on the positive outcome that a process is designed for, including things like customer sat, speed, or cost efficiency. So if flowcharts are clearly not the answer, how do we design processes with an emphasis on the elements that are key to their success? Things like customer satisfaction, commitments, responsibility, accountability, optimization, speed, efficiencies. These are the essential values of business process design. What if there were a methodology with the structure and rigor and repeatability to design processes with these values in mind from the very beginning? Well, the good news is that there is. The Commitment Management Protocol is a model-based process methodology developed over 25 years ago by MIT's Terry Winograd and Stanford's Fernando Flores. It has its theoretical basis in linguistics and philosophy, and is founded on a human-centric methodology based on the science of how people work together to get things done. It recognizes that work always gets done for someone, a customer, by someone, a performer, and fundamental to this two-party interaction is the commitment between them, the agreed-upon contract, if you will, between these two participants. The commitment management protocol provides rigor, structure, and repeatability so that the lens through which we look at a business process helps, by design, lead to more positive outcomes. The diagram that you see on the screen depicts the model for the commitment management protocol. Each interaction involves a customer on the left-hand side and a performer on the right. There are 4 phases in every CMP interaction. Firstly, the preparation phase, where the initial request is formulated by the customer. Secondly, is the negotiation phase, where the customer and the performer reach agreement on what we call the conditions of satisfaction. These conditions of satisfaction provide the foundation of the performer's work and the metric by which the customer evaluates that work. Thirdly is the performance phase, where the performer delivers to the agreed upon specification. Now, in most process depictions, the process map would end here, when the performer delivers his work. But the CMP is different in that it formally and explicitly recognizes that the performer's work is not done until the customer says it's done. This final phase, the acceptance phase, is where this final key step is illustrated. Acceptance may take multiple forms. It might be a thank you from the customer, a thumbs up, might be a confirmation email, might be a payment of an invoice, but without the customer formally acknowledging completion, we're not yet done. So for illustration purposes, let's work through an example of a simple process designed using the commitment management protocol methodology. First, we have a customer making a simple request for a pencil, and that takes place in the preparation phase. From there, we move to the negotiation phase, where the performer receives the request, understands it, and importantly, agrees to the stated condition of satisfaction. In the performance phase, the performer delivers. And finally, in the all-important acceptance phase, the customer acknowledges receipt and says thanks. The previous scenario described what we would call the happy path. In the happy path, the process moves simply and directly from one phase to the next until the interaction is completed. However, the real strength of the commitment management protocol is in its ability to model non-happy path scenarios. And this is where the 80-20 rule applies. The 20% of transactions that contain exception conditions typically take 80% of the time, the effort, the cost. But the model recognizes and supports non-happy path scenarios, an example of which might be in the negotiation phase, where that phase is often an iterative one, where there's back and forth between the customer and the performer until the conditions of satisfaction are well understood, sufficiently detailed, documented, and agreed upon by all parties. This is built into the methodology itself. So with all of the possible exception conditions known in advance to the CMP process designer, we now know exactly what questions to ask of the business process owner to fully describe the process, not just the happy path streams, but the exception conditions as well. And therein lies the real strength and power of this methodology. Now, obviously, most business processes are more complicated than a single interaction between a customer and a performer. Most, in fact, are made up of networks of these interactions. But the model is atomic in that each one of these interactions is identical in its structure. Each one has a customer and a performer. Each one has a condition of satisfaction. Each one has its 4 phases, and so on. So depicted here is a process map describing a business process called request refund. W01 on the top left represents the parent interaction, and other downstream activities and child processes are connected to the parent based on various conditions. Any heads down work performed by any individual along the way during the process is depicted with an X on the process map and is known as an activity. The overall process is considered complete only when the customer of the parent interaction, labeled as a subscriber in this example, has accepted the work. But note that there are customers and performers in interactions subordinate to the parent all along the way, that all have their own conditions of satisfaction that must be resolved in order for the entire process to ultimately succeed. So processes that are designed based on the commitment management protocol model help us to improve efficiency, improve throughput, ensure accountability, and enhance customer satisfaction, not accidentally, but by design. So if our focus is on business transformation through process improvement, this is a powerful means to achieving it. Now that we have a foundation in the commitment management protocol methodology, and if we believe that we can optimize processes by designing them in this way, the next step in the evolution of process improvement is with process automation and management software. WebSphere Lombardi Edition is a rapid application development tool for process automation and monitoring. It can be used to quickly and effectively automate processes designed with the commitment management protocol. And once implemented, we can leverage the tools in Lombardi to gather metrics on process performance for ongoing process review and optimization. In part 2 of this video, we'll demonstrate how Gemini uses the commitment management protocol to define business processes and then automate them in Lombardi for execution and monitoring.